All right, we're on to our second guest lecture of the evening. You've read some of James Randi's writing now. You've been introduced to him in Sleights of Mind as well, and now you get to meet the man. He's an icon in magic. He's the elder statesman of magic. He's responsible for introducing Penn and Teller to each other. I give you James Randi.
Thank you so much. And on that very subject that you just mentioned, my introducing Penn to Teller, it happened under strange circumstances. I was lecturing at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, and I did my lecture, and the public, usually they come up and shake hands with you or whatever, and they went out the door, and two fellows were left. One was a very big guy, Penn Jillette, and the other was a very much smaller guy, Teller. No, they didn't know one another, except they both worked in the streets of Philadelphia doing street magic. Teller did an act where he did a pantomime bit, and he dressed like a medieval jester, and Penn was doing, of all things, Indian club juggling. That's the big stuff with the heavy clubs and everything. That was his specialty, and he was doing that in the streets. And Teller was working on his own in the streets. They knew one another to say hello when they came to work in the morning, so to speak, to work the crowds, but they weren't acquainted otherwise. But when the audience finally all filed out the door, there were two guys left, and it was those two. I didn't know them either, and they came up and introduced themselves, and I said, "Do you guys know one another?" They said, "Oh yeah, we sort of, hi, kind of thing." And we went to have coffee. Well, that was quite an experience, because I sat there at the coffee table, looking back and forth, two of them, like this kind of a thing, and Teller lit up and he said, "You're looking at us like we're specimens of some kind." I said, "Indeed you are." He said, "I think you guys belong together. You should be working together. Think of Abbott and Costello, Mutt and Jeff, Laurel and Hardy. I mean, these are great comedy teams, great show business teams that complemented one another over the years. You two guys are so different in size, and one of you talks and the other doesn't say a word. I mean, the contrast between the two of you is so great. You should be partners." And they looked at one another. "Yeah, well, we sort of thought of it one time, but nothing came of it." Well, we left after having coffee together and a nice conversation. 2 weeks later, I got a call, and they said, "Well, we joined up, and we're now the Asparagus Valley Cultural Society." It was actually three of them. They had taken on the minister's son as a player of the little electric organ that they had, do the little music ditties for them, for the juggling and such. He left pretty soon because Penn's language is a little rough. That's not a very adequate description of it, but we'll settle for a little rough. And so that gentleman dropped out of the group, and they became Penn and Teller, and I'm entirely responsible for that, and I take responsibility for it. And if you want to take me to court for it, you can go right ahead. But they mention in all of their programs, they always say, without James Randi, there wouldn't be a Penn and Teller, so I feel guilty as can be. How many of you know who Penn and Teller are and you're familiar with their work? Oh, no, the vast number of you, that's fine. So most of you will understand the following joke. As Teller just said to me the other day, 7 seconds, that's not bad. Not bad, I just timed you to see Teller doesn't speak. Get it? Oh, okay. A couple of others said, "Ha ha ha." Yeah, okay. I think I'll take that out of the script. No. But they're very good friends of mine. They're lovely guys, and I am very, very fond of them, and I hope they're a little fond of me as well. Now, I was listening to DJ use the term magic a lot, but I differ with using that word as much as DJ uses it when he gives a talk like this. In fact, when most magicians give talks like this, because what we do is not magic. Magic is by dictionary definition, although dictionaries don't define words, they give usage. And magic is said to be, from the dictionary, the control of nature by means of spells and incantations. I've never used a damn incantation in my life, you know? Like, get off the lawn, you little bastard. Yeah, that kind of thing, but nothing more serious than that. Magic is not the right word for it. In the UK, they have the right idea. They call it conjuring. Of course, that also refers in another dictionary attribution to calling up the dead. I too can call up the dead, but when you call, will they answer? Shakespeare, someplace along the line. So I'd rather say conjuring, and if I use the term, I want you to understand what I'm speaking about, the apparent control of nature. I think, my opinion is distinctly that neuroscience and conjuring actually complement one another and can do so very efficiently. One thing I wanted to explain to you, use the term ideomotor, and that sounds like an idiot motor or something like that. I thought I should explain to the class, and in case they don't know what the ideomotor reaction is. Ideomotor reaction is the reason for dowsing sticks and Ouija boards and such working, or apparently seeming to work, because the ideomotor effect is really very strong, and I'll give you an illustration of how strong it can be. It is a psychological defect in our systems, which means that we are actually supplying the action, the energy, the movement and whatnot to an object or a substance or whatever you will. The fact that we're doing that. I'll give you that example. A good friend of mine, Dick Smith, is a billionaire. I don't know any millionaires. I only know billionaires, of course. And he lives in Australia and is very, very widely known. Anyone from Australia will certainly identify with the name Dick Smith. And he sponsored a test of dowsing, which is the supposed ability with a forked stick to find water underground or lost children or gold or whatever you need. Yeah, wide spectrum, anything they can find, they say, with it. Or a couple of parallel coat hanger wires, they go around like this, and then when they converge, or when they diverge, they have different theories on it, you see. And also these people, when they do this thing, half of them say you must always wear rubber footwear to insulate yourself from the ground. The others say you never wear footwear. No, you should be in bare feet actually to make contact with the ground. So the theories are a little different, and the bottom line about the whole thing is it doesn't work at all anyway, so it doesn't matter. Dick Smith sponsored this series of tests of the dowsers in Australia, and after the tests were done and we'd summed it all up, they hadn't found one damn thing. It was just ridiculous, and that's always the way it works. Always, if the tests are properly done, they just can't find anything. And there were a couple of them left over, and we had them over to the office, and we asked them, you know, well, what did you think of the test? And they go, oh, they were all well done, but there must have been some vibrations out there. These people talk about vibrations all the time. They have no idea what a vibration is. If you gave them a bushel basket full of them, they wouldn't know what they looked like or what to do with them, or how to store them or use them or whatever. They have no idea what the word means, but they love to use it. And the latest version, by the way, is quantum vibrations. They're really powerful, though. They're much more powerful than the ordinary vibrations. In any case, Dick Smith was with me when the crowd had all left. And there was a reporter there who wanted to get a big story on this. And I decided, I winked at Dick. I said, watch this. And there was, well, he had a table about like this, I guess, yes, and it was about as smooth as this. And there were papers piled all over the desk. It was an office, after all. And I had Dick go over to a filing cabinet that was set there, and he was in the electronic business. And he always had magnets sticking on the side of filing cabinets for some unknown reason. They want to get on there, and it's too hard to get them off, and just you walk away and leave them there. And stop your pacemaker as you walk by, if you're not careful. And so I asked Dick to get me one of the big aluminium magnets, very, very large like this. And he put it down on the table for me. And I had a coat hanger wire that I bent at angles like this, an iron coat hanger wire. And I said to the reporter, here, just pass this, you know, about 7 or 8 inches above the magnet, see what you feel. As he did, it pulled down, very, very strong magnet, and it pulls this down very easily, peeled it up. I said, no, try a little higher, about so high like that. And he went over it like this, and oh, he said, oh yes, I can feel it. It's very strong. And the rod actually turned in his hand. I said, so you can feel that? I said, yes, watch. Here's a big piece of cardboard. I took the big piece of cardboard and put it over the magnet. And I asked the gentleman to hand me something over here. At the same time, I skidded the magnet way over to the other end of the table. Dick Smith saw that, came over and surreptitiously grabbed the magnet and took it well away, you see, and put down the big piece of heavy cardboard. And I said to the fellow, now try it again and you'll see that it worked through cardboard. It had no effect on the whatsoever. He said, I know magnetism works through cardboard. And I said, well, just try it, satisfy yourself. And so he brought it across the top. He said, oh yeah, I can feel it. And he moved on like that. He said, it's very strong. I couldn't bring it much closer, I'm sure. I said, bring it down just a little closer, an inch closer. So he said, oh yeah, whoa. And I said, move the cardboard. He moved the cardboard. There's no magnet around. That's the ideomotor effect, folks. It's a beautiful demonstration of it. It's very hard to demonstrate it because you've got to get somebody who's relatively innocent and doesn't know about cardboard, I suppose. I don't know. But that is the ideomotor effect. He genuinely felt the tug of the magnet. Even when the magnet wasn't there, he genuinely felt it. It's a psychological effect. The ideomotor effect has nothing to do with idiots, I don't think. Maybe, though, come to think of it. But that is what is responsible for the dowsing effect. People really feel that they're not moving the rods. But if you tell them, you've got 4 boxes here, and you've got the soft substance in box number 3, for example, you let them take a look and they see that it's in box number 3, and they believe it's in box number 3, and it is, and they come along with the dowsing rods, and the dowsing rods will come and they will indicate box number 3. If you then do it blind, and double blind means that you don't know where it is, and they don't know where it is. Somebody else places it in one of the boxes, which is chosen by a random means, like a die or something like that. And if he then comes in, he'll kind of heck of a time. He's moving back and forth, and then he might get the idea that box looks as if it's been moved or something. But a double blind test like that is the only way to test something of this effect. The double-blind effect, when you don't know what the result is, that is where the target is, and the person who's being tested doesn't know it, and there's nobody else in the room who does know. That person's got to, who placed the object in the first place, has got to leave the room so that it is strictly blind. It's very, very important. Now, I live in Fort Lauderdale, if you call that living. The average age of my neighbors is deceased. And I'm looked upon as a youngster. Here he comes again, he's walking all by himself. How did they do that, Harry? I don't know, Ruth. No, this kind of thing. And, but it's more or less a retirement community, I guess. But I love it, and it's just about my speed, I guess, now, which is very slow. And I went to visit the Fort Lauderdale Magic Club. Oh, what a sight that was. Whoa. The old fellas in the club, most of them know one trick, and only one trick. And as soon as a stranger comes into the bed, you want to see my trick? You know, right away. And he bores him with it. Now, my good friend Jerry Andrus, just recently deceased. Jerry Andrus was a wonderful man, a wonderful, wonderful man. He died at an extremely old age, 96. I mean, hey, we should all be happy enough to live to that age, I would say. I'm getting there, Harry. And Jerry was a lecturer to magicians only. He only worked for magic clubs and such because he had great subtleties to show them. And after he would sell his little booklets on different types of magic, you know, coin magic and mental magic and that sort of thing. And he would also get a fee, a check from the Magic Club. So he came to Florida. He was going to tour all over Florida, and I volunteered. I wasn't busy for a few weeks, and I said, I'll tour you all around Florida, and we'll have a wonderful time together. And Jerry is was the most honest man in the world. His head would explode if he tried to tell a lie. Even a simple little, very faint lie, his head would explode, I'm sure. You'd hear a pop and that'd be the end of it, and there'd be no more Jerry Andrus. But at the end of the lecture, these elderly folks sitting there watching the lecture, at the end of the lecture, the manager of the club gave him a round of applause, and everything, and they all gave him a round of applause. And he said, now, Mr. Andrus will sell his books. And he said, no, I'm not selling books. And he already had them out on the table. The manager looked at him and said, how come? He said, no, I decided not to sell any books. Then he whispered to him and he said, they didn't understand one word I said. That is true. They were looking for the secret of a trick. How do you do it? Oh, you stick a nail in there. Ah, now I know. They weren't looking for the subtleties that he was trying to teach them. But then I pulled a trick on Jerry Andrus. Oh, and he refused the check from the club too. He said, no, I can't take the check. No, this is not a thing I should have done. He was so honest that it was painful, believe me. I grabbed the check, went to the manager, and I said, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Jerry was staying at my house, you see. So I got a hold of his checkbook off his table there, and I took out a deposit slip, filled it, and put it in the mail. Jerry Andrus died a few years ago, never knowing that he got that money. It went directly into his bank. Maybe he was a little puzzled in his balance, but nonetheless, he did get the money. I had to defeat this abysmal honesty that he had. It was just shameful to be that honest. Anyway, that's my adventure with magic clubs and such, and I want to show you a bit of a tape now. I want you to look at it carefully. I'm doing a trick. I did very well over the years. I did 22 Carson shows, Johnny Carson that is, and as I was saying last night in another talk I gave, I dread the day when I'll come in front of a crowd like this and mention Johnny Carson and people will say, who? That's terrifying. I've already been through the experience when I mentioned to a magic club not too long ago about the use of carbon paper. And hands went up, what's carbon paper? They'd never heard of carbon paper. It just showed how incredibly old you can get and still be able to walk around and talk. See? I'm of a generation that I'm not often speaking to, but the carbon paper thing really surprised me. And I hate to tell you this, but I did a thing before Fort Lauderdale High School. This was one of the freebies that I do as a public service. I mentioned the name Adolf Hitler, and the kids didn't know who he was. Now, maybe that surprises you a bit, but in another 15 years or so, it may not surprise people. You know, that I find it difficult. I've lived too long. No, I wasn't serious. I mean, I wasn't serious. I didn't mean what I just said. Yeah. Take no chances, you know. Now, this tape that you're about to see is one that sort of explains itself. Johnny Carson and I got along very, very well. And I usually had the chance to go and see him personally instead of going to his producer, who I knew equally well, and tell him an idea I had for a show. And we'd set a date for it right away, and he'd look forward to it. And he always asked me very carefully in advance of the show what I wanted to say and what I could ask him about in order to promote myself. He's very, very kind to me, very delightful gentleman, and I miss him a great deal. But let's take a look at this. This involves a man named Peter Popoff. Anybody here know the name Peter Popoff? Yeah, we've got a couple of figures went up there. Yeah, not very much enthusiasm, you know, this kind of thing. No, none of them, he said just like that. Okay. What? Who?
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my manager here is giving me a hard time. You're going to see this tape. I think it's self-explanatory. Watch it carefully and see if you can see the trick.
Now, you've got a small piece of tape here we're going to look at. Would you tell us what we're going to see here and how you did this and what it's supposed to show?
Well, we've researched Peter Popoff very, very well, and Mr. Popoff, pardon me, Reverend Popoff, is not going to be very happy with this, I don't think. You're going to see, first of all, a short segment of tape as you would see it if you were watching it at home. This is what Popoff featured on his own program. You will apparently see it healing. Now, we went to Houston, Texas, and we discovered that the man was wearing, of all things, a hearing aid in his left ear. And a man who heals the deaf, Popoff himself, and a man who heals the deaf and the blind isn't going to have much use for a hearing aid. One would think if God is speaking to him, maybe someone else is speaking to him. So when we got to San Francisco, we put this fellow Alec Jason as an expert in electronics and a surveillance man, and he put a scanner, electronic scanner on it, and we picked up something interesting. But first, let's look at the first cut of tape.
All right, this is the tape as you would see it if you were watching the show. Okay, watch the monitors.
Who is Harold?
Great voice, right?
I just believe that God is going to burn those cataracts off of your eyes right now. 34788 Foothill Drive. I tell you, the angels of God are round about your home. Just take those glasses off and put your eyes. If you've got cataracts, if you've got glaucoma, I want you just to put your hand over your eyes as I pray for these precious ones. Sister, you've got eye problems, to take your glasses off, lay your hands on your eyes. Here it comes. To God is going to give these precious ones divine surgery. Right now, Jesus. That's it. That's the anointing of the Holy Ghost. Praise God. Praise God. I'll tell you, the anointing is flowing through this place. Thank you, Jesus.
Okay, now let's recap.
I paused the tape at this moment. Anybody, now, if you've seen this before, it's on YouTube, and it's been around for quite a while. It's not fair of you to answer the question because you'll know from YouTube. So be honest. Try to think of Jerry Andrus now. Remember, okay? The most honest man in the world. Anybody any ideas, if you haven't seen the tape before, of how Popoff could come up with this information? That was their address. That was their address, the exact number of the house and such, and he knew what their ailment was. Any ideas? Yeah.
He was the pastor of their church.
Oh, no. That's a good notion, though. No, he was nowhere near it.
What is he?
Yeah.
The people had to give all their information beforehand.
They didn't have to, but they did inadvertently. You'll see the solution to it ahead here. This is a method that Popoff used. Yes, they weren't required to do this, but you'll see how I explain it to Johnny, and then you'll see the tape again, and you'll see the gimmick. And I'll tell you something afterwards that I think will make you laugh.
And to answer that other question from the first fellow, this guy is a faith healer. He is a pastor, but this isn't his church. This is a revival. This is a big faith healing service that people come in regionally for.
Yeah, he is not, no, he's a faith healer. He travels all over the world, as a matter of fact, doing these so-called things. Please.
What we've seen here, these two people who were there had not met Popoff before themselves. And yet he calls out his name, and then he called out a number or something?
He called out their address.
Their address.
And they're astonished to hear this, because they didn't tell him. But what you don't know is that his wife has been touring around the audience, getting into conversation. Is Jesus going to heal you today? I see. Where do you live? This kind of thing. And they've filled out healing cards in advance of the program and handed them in. They're now backstage, and someone is sitting at a transmitter backstage. Let's see that same segment again. But now you'll have the advantage of knowing what Peter Popoff is hearing in his left ear through a hearing aid.
Jerry Reed.
Is it Jerry?
Reed.
Reed? Is it Reed? Jerry Reed?
It's a woman. She's praying for her husband, Harold.
Who is Harold?
He's got cataracts.
I just believe that God is going to burn those cataracts off of your eyes right now.
They live at 34788 Foothill Drive.
34788 Foothill Drive. I tell you, the angels of God are round about your home. Just take those glasses off and put your eyes. If you've got cataracts,
She's got eye problems too.
you've got glaucoma, I want you just to put your hand over your eyes as I pray for these precious ones. Sister, you've got eye problems too. Take your glasses off, lay your hands on your eyes. Here it comes. God is going to give these precious ones divine surgery. Right now, Jesus.
is, that's disturbing when you see it.
It is indeed.
You tend to laugh at it, and yet these people obviously aren't so impressed with what's going on.
Oh, they're absolutely impressed. You see people collapse on the floor, tears running down their faces, believing that their kids with drug addiction are going to be healed now because he knew their name. He says he's talking to God, that God speaks directly to him because he's an anointed minister. And three things amaze me about that. First of all, it turns out that God's frequency, I didn't know he used radio, is 39.170 megahertz. And God is a woman, obviously, and sounds exactly like Popoff's wife, Elizabeth.
Has he seen this tape?
No, he does not know about this until this very moment.
Interesting. Okay, we'll take a break.
Well, oh, thank you. Now, I gave you the gimmick there and such, but this is what most of the faith leaders who we investigated were using. They would send the wife or an assistant around the audience and try to get them to subscribe to one of the newsletters that he would send out, and a free photograph of Reverend Popoff. Wow. Can you imagine getting a free photograph of Reverend Popoff? Wow, your very own photograph, yes. Maybe with an autograph on it if you really played your cards right. And this was their gimmick, his gimmick, pardon me, and the faith leaders' gimmick all over the world, and getting this information in advance. And it was being sent to him, to her, via her, to him, I'm sorry, via radio, and he was hearing it. The receiver was a little tiny thing that fitted entirely inside the ear. So no wires coming from it at all. And we discovered the gimmick, and we tapped into the frequency, and we made that recording that you just saw. I must tell you something else too, that I think you'll find rather amusing. You notice that Carson, when in the last segment that you saw there, Johnny, he was doing this with his pencil. You notice that? Now, those of us who knew him knew that that was a sign that he was very disturbed. Very disturbed. And he saw what the gimmick was. Now, I have to go back to the afternoon earlier when I went to his producer, not to Johnny directly on this one, to suggest this particular segment for the show. And I went to his producer and I said, I have something I don't want you to tell Johnny about. He said, what? I showed him the bit of tape that we had, the 2 bits of tape, and he said, oh, this is gangbusters. We have to use it tonight. He picked up his intercom and he called his secretary and he said, cancel the starlets for tonight. We'll use them tomorrow night or some other night, but we've got a special piece. We're going to close it tonight. She said, yes, sir. Okay. And then he went to the regular phone, going to call John. And I put my hand over and I said, don't call John. He said, oh, you know, John doesn't like surprises. I said, think of the expression on his face when he hears Mrs. Popoff's voice coming out of the system. He looked for him. It was Fred de Cordova, now deceased as well. He said, okay, but it's on your head. And he took a chance, and it worked very, very well, I must say. But the thing you don't know, and that nobody knows, and whenever I see that tape, I always break out in a big smile at a certain point in the tape because it was edited. You see, they did this in the afternoon. They would do it at about 5:30 in the evening, California time, and they had the chance to edit it if they had to take any bad mistakes out of it or any poo-poo words or anything like that. You know, stuff like that did happen, I guess you can imagine. And then they would broadcast it again, first in New York and across the country. Well, at the point, there are 3 sound systems. One for me, my mic, Johnny's mic, and the audience mic, the general audience mic. She's pointing out at the audience, picking up their reaction. They had to edit out Johnny's mic at a certain point because when he was sitting there and listening and watching the tape, and he heard Mrs. Popoff's voice, and he said, oh, shit! And he grabbed his mouth and he quieted everybody down like that, you see, because he just came out with it inadvertently. And so they had to cut that little piece out of the tape. But I thought you'd be amused by that. Johnny was a real guy, after all, and he did have his moments of surprise like that, and he was quite astonished at that particular point. Now, yeah, I'm sorry. This is not part of the act. I'm talking to some people right now. I'll call you later. So that's genuine, yes. I was just being called from Florida. So he'll never talk to me again, I know. There are some things that I would like to acquaint you with, subtleties of the magic art. And one way to do that is to do a couple of small demonstrations for you. I'm sure you wouldn't be loath to see something like that. Oh, okay. Throw money. I have here in my pocket a little box of magic we just bought from that Walgreens or something. I do a few of these boxes and matches from the box here. They're right there. Oh, green heads. Okay. My favorite kind. Now, I got a call at my office a few years back. Now, I had lectured at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories in California. Lawrence Livermore Laboratories are unique in that if you walk in there, you can throw a stone in any direction and hit a PhD in physics. The place is thick with them. You can't avoid hitting one of them, and he'll be a PhD in physics, he or she, of course. And I got a call one morning, and my assistant at that time, Andrew, said, you better pick this up. This is a scientist, a physicist from Lawrence Livermore Labs. And I said, oh, they've got a lot of employment for another lecturer. She saw I picked up the phone very cheerily. And I said, it's James Randi. He said, this is Dr. So-and-so, and I mentioned his name to avoid embarrassing the gentleman. He said, yeah, I think you've lost your $1 million, Mr. Randi. I'll have to explain what that is. You see, the James Randi Educational Foundation has now offered $1 million a prize. Just get it like that. If you can establish the existence of any paranormal, I'll call it a supernatural force or power or demonstration of any kind under satisfactory observing conditions. It's that simple. We've had hundreds of applicants over the years. Many of them have been tested in this country and around the world. None of them have ever come close to it at all because it's designed in such a way that the answer is very obvious at the end. He either did it, like I can fly by flapping my arms, step over to the window. You don't have to have a judge to decide whether or not that worked. Well, you don't get the prize. So having that prize out there and being so busy trying not to give it away, I should be very serious here. If I gave it away, if we gave it away, pardon me, the James Randi Educational Foundation, that would mean a Nobel Prize, and we'd make it back immediately, of course, because it would have proven the existence of some sort of paranormal power, you see. Well, this guy from, this physicist from Lawrence Livermore Labs was on the phone. He said, you know, you've lost your money. There's no question about it. We have a young fellow from Israel. It's not very gallant, as you might suspect. No, his name is Ronnie Marcus, and he has psychic powers. He can control nature. He can move objects with the power of his mind. I was terrified, of course. Yeah, sure. And Andrew had stayed on the phone, you see, and I signaled to him to keep listening. And he said he did a miracle with a box of matches. I sort of lit up, and Andrew, being a magician as well, he sort of lit up. And Andrew went to the library, looked into Martin Gardner's big fat book on impromptu magic tricks, because he figured, and I figured I knew what the trick was, you see. And he went over to the, Andrew was very smart in this respect. He went over to the copy machine, copied that particular page, and took it over back to his desk, where he had a fax machine. He put it in the fax machine, ready to press the button after dialing a number. So I said, what does this gentleman do? He said, well, he will take a box of matches, roll up my sleeve, just, you know, wires or magnets or anything like that there, of course. Yes. And he would just lay it on the back of his hand, and he will make it levitate. And I thought that was quite a remarkable claim, and this is what he did with it. He would, see, okay. He would just, pardon me, make a little, oops, make a little gesture back there. Okay. Make a gesture like this, and it would rise up in the back of his hand, and then it would go back down again upon the desire. See, rise, rise, slowly, very, very slowly. That's it. Be dignified. And then back again, very, very slowly. There, that was well done, well done. Now, I have no idea how that was done. Oh, sorry. That happens all the time. I hate when that happens. Don't you hate when that happens? So, The guy on the other end of the line was saying to me, well, I suppose that means we get the $1 million. I said, well, let's not go so quickly. I said, you have a fax machine there. What is your number? He gave me the number and we pressed the button. And this is what I heard. I'm listening on the phone. Andrus was listening on the phone too. We're waiting for a reaction. And he said, oh, here it is. Here it is. Okay, it came through. And I said, just read it, please. And he said, sure. This is what we heard over the telephone. The legislating matchbox. Take a small box of matches, remove some of the matches, make it a little lighter, put them in the back of your hand. I said, hello? He said, oh, I'm here, all right. I said, okay, continue reading. Click. That was the end of that phone call, and I've not heard from Lawrence Livermore Labs again to engage me in for another lecture, which is rather disappointing. Nonetheless, the trick is so simple. I mean, how stupidly simple kind of trick? Yeah, you simply put it in the back of your hand, but you close the box. You see, I push the box out a little bit like that, the opening down, and place it on the back of my hand, and then close it like that, catching some of the skin on the back of my hand. And you simply tense up the hand like that, up she goes, and then you relax a little bit, and down she comes. I don't know how it's done. It's a miracle of a semi-religious nature. That's how easy the trick is done, and now you're free to do it yourself if you want. But it gets better. It gets better. We're sort of running out of time. How many minutes have we got?
Oh, we've got 20 minutes.
Oh, 20 minutes. My God. I'll tell you the story of my life. I was born in a very early age. In a log cabin I helped my dad build. We were very poor. We couldn't afford to have kids, so people exterminated me. It goes on like this. Yes, I would like to show you a card trick, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh. Yeah. But I turkey hope now. Now, this is, I hope this is, I complete that, let me just test it. Yeah. Sure. I have actually come through chemotherapy not too long ago, and a double heart bypass as well. And frankly, the strength in my fingers is considerably reduced. I have a hard time even flexing a deck of cards like this. This is difficult for me, and this is not acting. But well, that's not too bad. Close enough for government work. Yeah. All right. I think that most people have a strange idea. Certainly, statistics is strange to most people. It's strange to me, but I have good statisticians who work with me and for me, and they straighten me out on those things. I suspect that most people here, if you're considering the identity of cards in a deck, if they're thinking of only red and black, we know that there are 26 red and 26 black, hopefully. I did check it, didn't I? Most people would say that if you look through a shuffled deck, you'd probably find them red, black, maybe 2 reds and 2 blacks, maybe even 3 blacks somewhere, or 3 reds, someplace along the line. But they expect them to be pretty well sorted. But this is a well shuffled deck. Oh, ace of spades on the bottom. What are the chances of that? 1 in 52. And let's just look through it now. Okay, this looks pretty well shuffled, yes. Oh, there's 4 reds in a row. Just showing you that it's, joker. Oh, I don't need the joker. Sorry, I'm going to take the jokers out. But, there's 4 reds in a row there. Another joker. All right. I'm supposed to be the only joker here. 4 blacks. No, it's pretty well shuffled. Another 4 reds, you see. But most people would think that they would be much better shuffled than that they should be more or less even with reds and blacks alternating. That doesn't happen in nature, of course. I need a volunteer assistant. Young lady, could you step over and take a seat right here, please? You know the difference between one card and the other? Young people, well, you know what playing cards are. That's the 4 of the funny thing with the 3 clubs. Yeah, clubs, that's what you're calling it. But you're doing it. I know. Very good, okay. Okay, old gambling all. I did 2A anyway, so there. Now, I'm going to, you've seen that the deck is quite well shuffled. We've removed the jokers from it. I'm going to ask you to sort out this deck. Even though you've never had this deck in your hand before. I'm going to ask you to sort it out into 2 piles on the table, face down. And what I'm going to try to get you to do, this is not an easy thing. I'm going to try to get you to sort it in such a way that reds will be in one pile and blacks will be in another. Now that sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Oh, I showed you the bottom card today. I should put that in there so you won't be prejudiced. Even I didn't look this time. Yeah, sure. Now, what do you think the top card is, for example? Red or black? Black. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. I've got to take out a couple of 10s. I should do that. Yeah, that simplifies things a great deal here. It's got to be black. I don't know. Oh, the black 10. Look, all right. I'm going to put these 2 10s out here because these cards have the most ink on them, you see, of any one color. Now, if you come to a court card, in Jack of Diamonds, for example, you've got problems with that because it's got yellow and blue and black and red in it, you see, so you may have a problem with that. Just go and keep the deck in your own. Okay, I'll write it word before you can see it. Now, what I want you to do is you start getting the cards one at a time. What do you think that card is? Red or black? If you have that one, then take that long to make a simple decision like that. Okay, black card. Place it down there, okay? You get the picture now? Take the next one and continue on doing that with the entire deck. Okay. She's doing very well, actually.
Should I go fast?
Hold on for a second. You relax a little bit there.
Okay.
You pay more attention. I'm going to stop you at that point because you're almost halfway through the pack. And I stopped you at this point for a very specific reason. If you get down near the end of the pack, and you've only got 5 or 6 cards left, and you see there are more cards in this pile than now, you might tend to even them up. So I'm going to take out the marker cards here and just simply switch them like that, but I'll put them up on top like that. Now you continue on sorting, but you were putting blacks over here, or what you thought were blacks over here. Now I want you to put what you consider to be reds over here and what you consider to be blacks over there. So this is the red pile now. Continue on, do it the same way you were, but see, the 2 piles don't have to be the same height, but the sorting can still be correct. Continue on, fine. Yeah, you're doing it right. You've never done this kind of thing before, eh?
Never.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, this is really quite remarkable. Yeah, continue on, yes. You're doing okay. I've never seen it this well done. You're not paying attention now, you may lose track.
Okay.
All right. Oh, wait a second here. Wait now. You see, I have to take a look at this one because your attention was distracted, you see. Oh, I was wrong. But it has very little ink on it, so I was a little worried about that. Or continue on. No,
okay.
I thought that might have been a mistake. Continue on.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, all right. Now, at no time do my fingers leave my hands, ladies and gentlemen. Watch this very carefully. I think you're going to be quite surprised to see the results here. Now, you're not a stooge of mine, a member of my family, or anything like that. I wish you were, because it's pretty damn good. Every one of them red, on top of the red marker, and then every one of them black. How did you do that? I think rather well. And exactly the opposite here. Every one of these black on top of the black marker, then every one of them red. You didn't miss one. Congratulations.
Thank you.
May I interject, Randy?
Pardon?
Raise your hand if you're learning out of this world for your final project in this class.
Yeah.
You've just seen a master class on out of this world.
Pretty damn good trick. This is my own particular version, by the way. Other versions are a little more complicated, but I usually am running out of time, and I'm running out of time now. but we will have time for questions and answers. One hopes. That is, we'll have time for questions. Whether you'll get answers, that's another matter altogether. That's something I wanted to show you there. I think that particular version even puzzled some of the magicians. I worked on that for many years, and at the age of 84, I finally got it down. So you have to study a long time to do these things. Questions that I might answer from this audience. And please, if you're holding up your hand, that's not holding up your hand, okay? This is holding up your hand. That's the picture? Okay. There's a hand right back there. A brave gentleman. Yes, sir.
Sorry to take the first question, Dwight. What percentage of your challengers are true believers? People that actually
all of them. All of them, except for two. Down over the years, except for two. Those two people thought they were able to fool me, and wrong. I solved it right away. And I'll give you an example of that, as a matter of fact. No, the true believers, they really believe that they have got the powers. Those are the people who come for the prize. People like Uri Geller say, I don't need that money. Sylvia Brown says, she said on the Larry King Show live, she said she would meet the challenge and she would submit herself to a challenge, and that was 15 years ago, 20 years ago maybe now, I'm not sure. So haven't seen Sylvia since. I wonder where she is. No, most people, all of them pretty well, except for the two. I'll mention one of the two. One gentleman showed up in Fort Lauderdale, and he said he was, I knew this rascal from way back when, so he wasn't going to fool me. He showed up early in the morning. He made the arrangement with us the day before. He was going to drive into Fort Lauderdale, and he said that if we took a person and secreted that person in a hotel someplace in the Fort Lauderdale area, within a 10-mile radius of where the foundation building was, that he would get into his car and he would drive directly to where that person was. I said, oh, I guess we've lost $1 million. Yeah, sure. And so he showed up the next morning, bright and early, and I met him at the door, brought him inside, made coffee, and went outside again. I said, he said, well, where is the person that I'm going to find? And I said, oh, it's my sister, and she's already there. He didn't like that very much. It turned out that he had a friend with him who was obviously going to follow when we sent the person out there, you see, to be secreted down on a radio or a telephone or whatever, to give him the information. But she was already there, and I said, she's in the hotel, she's rented it for the day, and she's probably still sleeping, but I'll phone her and wake her up. And he decided not to take the test. So that's how we have to get around these things. You have to be one small step ahead of them. That's all that's really needed. And the other fellow, that's a very long story that you would be dreadfully bored by, even more than that story.
Yes. Randy, just on that point, you can see for the first time in JREF history last fall, we conducted a live $1 million challenge on ABC's Nightline, prime time, and you could see 6 psychics tested to a person. Every one of them was sincere, and they, speaking of psychology, they had impressive self-justificatory schemes, because before the test they said, I really know my ability, I'm going to win this test. After the test they said, I'm so glad I failed this test because it was Spirit's plan, because if I won the test, it would have distracted me from my important work. This last July, we did a live test in front of 1,200 people. It's on YouTube. And you'll see 2 important things. One, the seriousness with which Randy and those others of us at the JREF take these claims. They're not trivial. They shouldn't be dismissed out of hand, because if these claims are real, it's going to change everything, and they merit our critical attention. And the second thing is you'll see this incredible capacity for people to lose and make sense out of it, right? Yeah. And so that's one of our most popular videos of the past 6 months or so. It's on youtube.com/James Randi Foundation.
Yeah, and rationalization is what that's called, and they're very, very good at it. They take a course, a special course in all universities in rationalization of failures, and that's for business people mostly, but certainly for scientists as well. Other questions that we have? You had a question.
Do we still have time?
Oh, we got 5 minutes.
So it's clear that no one's ever won $1 million, but what's the closest anyone's ever come in?
Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked that, because you can't come close to it. It's like being close to being pregnant. You either are, not you. So you either are pregnant or you're not pregnant. There's no in between, you see. No, we designed every test in such a way that the rules are agreed to and all signed and notarized in such in advance that this will constitute a winning score and this constitutes a losing score. And you decide. In other words, they should be able to, they're guessing the identity of red and black cards or something like that. That in a deck of 50 cards, if you take two of them, and a deck of 50 cards, if they get 25 right and 25 wrong, that's about what you would expect, but on either side of that, a certain margin. But if you, it depends on how many times they're going to go through the deck. We may suggest that maybe they'd have to get 80% correct, or sometimes only 55% correct if the number of tests was sufficient, you see. So we get statisticians to decide those things for us, and they're very expert at what they do. There's no mistake. At the end of it, you look at the results and they either won or they haven't won. The example I gave, I could fly by flapping my arms, whoops, you lose, kind of thing, that's a little extreme. But we actually, when we were setting up the program for, was it election to broadcasting, we interviewed some of the psychics. One guy said he could fly by flapping his arms. So he said, well, how do you prove it? He went to the window, and it was locked. We were on the 7th floor of this broadcasting building, and he couldn't open the window. I think that he was actually going to step up there and jump out. I never found out, and I'm sort of glad that I didn't, and I think he's glad that he didn't too. I'm not sure about that, though. Other questions that we might answer for you folks? What? No questions? I guess I was so lucid in my explanation today. Well, yes, thank you.
What kind of backlash have you gotten from exposing some of these people? Have there been any type of backlash, or just?
No, not at all. No, well, you see, Sylvia Brown never came for the test, for example, and we used to have a Sylvia Brown clock on the web page, but that got tiresome after a while, because every day it would jump up one day, and she didn't react to it. Nobody else reacted to it, so the hell with that, I say. Yes.
What was the result of the Popoff expose? Did it end his career?
Oh, no. He changed the name of the church from Peter Popoff Ministries to People United for Christ and stayed in business. Oh, yeah. Oh, he's on the Black Entertainment Network now, doing very, very well for himself. We don't know what gimmick he's using now. He may be using the same gimmick because they don't obviously change, but he's doing very well.
He no longer does faith healing. Now he does supernatural debt relief, where he actually appeals to his viewers to max out their credit cards, make a love offering, and he'll send holy oil to anoint your bills. Pray a scripted prayer over them, and God will provide a supernatural bankruptcy. So it's real skullduggery. It is taking advantage of people when they're at their lowest, not unlike the TV psychics who talk to people who just lost loved ones, and that's what riles us up. There's a sort of righteous indignation in this skepticism, in this application of science to these sorts of claims.
And some years ago in California, a friend of mine, and just recently you see David Alexander, a magician of note, he used to rent a warehouse which was shared with Peter Popoff. They just had sliding doors in between the two halves of this big barn sort of a place. And at night he led me down there one night. We went into the Popoff section, illegally, so don't and we saw where he was packaging oil from Israel. That's what he called it. Olive oil from the Mount of Olives. Yeah, sure, I don't think there are olive trees left there, but he managed to get some somehow. And we found out what he was doing. It's a long strip of plastic tubing, and it's sealed off. It's an assembly line sort of thing. And they would put oil into it, and then this thing would come down and seal it up into little packets, and they'd mail these packets out. But what was supplying this long plastic tube here was a huge barrel of mazola cooking oil. That's corn oil with some additives in it. It didn't come from Israel, I can tell you that. It came from right around the corner, because there was a supplier down the street of restaurant supplies, and that's where he got it from, and he was filling these oil of Israel things. Yeah. Question?
We talked about the critical thinking in terms of skepticism, in terms of like debunking faith healers and pseudo-psychics and this such, but is there any way of showing how the media, for example, shines the spotlight on certain issues and neglects other issues? Does your foundation talk about critical thinking in terms of politics or media?
Oh, yeah, we have to. And my next book, A Magician in the Laboratory, is going to have a huge chapter on the media and where they've got us down in this sort of thing. Remember, the media doesn't care. They don't give a damn one way or the other. As long as they've got a good story, they don't care if it's true or if it harms anybody, if it costs anybody any money or anything. They just don't care. They want the bottom line, which is to sell the newspaper, which has advertisements in it. That pays for the cost of their souls, I guess. I don't know. Though I don't believe much in that sort of thing, as you may have gathered. But that is exactly what the media does. They just don't care one way or the other. And the story, you know, you see people sitting around typewriters and computers and typewriters. Remember them? Yeah, computers, keyboards. Before the evening newscast saying, we need another 40 seconds, we need another 40 seconds, make something up, get some, you know, they really are panicking to do this kind of thing. And they don't care whether it's true or not. They can be, and if it's political, they really don't care if it's true. Because most of the time we know it ain't. So, I think we're out of time now.
Let's thank our speakers.